Welcome to the Superpower You podcast. This is episode 68. I'm Lisa LaCroix, and our topic today is What's Your Superpower?
Welcome to the Superpower You podcast, where we reveal the mental models and tactical skills needed to activate your inner superhero. And here's your host, Lisa LaCroix.
Hello, lovelies. Hello. I'm recording today from my hotel in San Diego, where I'm attending Social Media Marketing World, and I'm here to build my skills in order to get the show out to more people. Do you want to help? Today and all days, please consider sending this episode or any episode onto a friend or to a family member you think might be interested or might enjoy the show. Most podcast platforms have a share button. You can also just email them the website link, in this case, at lisabl.com/68. Or if you just want a one-click direct download link, you can send them to lisabl.com/listen68. I feel like I have been a little remiss. We are now 68 episodes in, and while I talk about superpowers every single week, talking about the superpowers of my guests, I have not yet done an episode that explores and describes and supports you in finding your superpower. So recently I decided to leave some time on my calendar to do individual coaching calls in service of identifying my listeners' superpowers, because I think it is incredibly powerful to know what your superpower is. Knowing it will allow you to use it in your life and apply it to your work, in your relationships, essentially everywhere. Building your superpower will allow you to take the impact that I know you are already having into every area. So if that is something that appeals to you, you can go right now to lisabl.com/coaching and grab your spot. I do not have a lot of times available, but if it sounds like that's the right thing for you to do, I would absolutely love to connect with you and to support you in that way. Now, if you don't need that kind of personal attention and exploration, I nonetheless want to encourage you to, and I want to support you in thinking deeply about your own superpower. So today I'm going to talk about what I mean by superpower, and if you've been a regular listener, you probably already have a pretty good idea. I want you to know why yours is so important, how to identify it, and how to use it in your life. So for context on this, one of my very deeply held beliefs is that we are all needed, that our unique gifts, strengths, skills, and yes, our superpowers are really important, and that no matter what yours is, you have before you a brilliant opportunity, a gift to give once you know what it is. You'll have the opportunity to use your superpower to serve the world. And even better, when we contribute from our strengths, we win. It's my contention that you will feel better, that you'll be healthier, that you'll be more fully engaged in your life, and that you will be more successful at everything you do when you're aware of and using your superpower. And just like my guests, you will be changing the world in your own way. Now, some people think, and in fact, there's a narrative in our culture that says, yeah, your strengths are great, but you must work on your weaknesses, that we have to conquer our weaknesses. Well, I generally believe that doing so, sure, that's useful, maybe. I mean, I'm not, to tell you the truth, even 100% sure that putting any attention on our weaknesses is impactful. But in any case, I'm certain that it is not nearly as central, necessary, or powerful as starting with and building on our strengths. If you have been around the show, if you've been listening for a while, you might recall my episode number 16 with champion American rhythm and Latin dancer and Dancing with the Stars pro Elena Gronienko. She talked on that episode about the power of finding what you are good at and highlighting it everywhere. Everywhere. When I asked her about the secrets of competition, what she could share as a champion, competitive dancer, she said, some dancers have very interesting choreography. Some are interesting rhythmically. Some have great chemistry in their partnerships, and everyone is very different, she said. And given that there are many judges in a competition, each with their own opinion, it is impossible to say what is better. So what she said was this: I wasn't trying to be as artistic with my hands like some of the other girls, and I wasn't trying to be flexible and do 25 splits like the others. I wasn't trying to be fast because I knew they were already faster. And so in that case, I would always be in second place. She said, the thing to do is to stick with whatever you are good at, to show it off as much as possible. And in her case, it was her legs and the lines she could make with them. So she said, I learned early on that was my strength, and so I featured it in my dance, in my choreography, in my costumes, everywhere. And I'm telling you that when she shared that with me, I absolutely got shivers because it rings so deeply true to me. And also because it's so generalizable for dancers, for other artists, for everyone. So I want you to please ask yourself where and how this applies to you. Identifying and focusing on your superpower is so powerful. And here's why. Because what you focus on expands. And so if you pay attention to your superpower, it is going to amplify it. And so knowing it, thinking about it, talking about it, celebrating it will consciously and also unconsciously have it showing up in your life more fully. So I assert that it is powerful to simply put less attention on our weaknesses. And on that, incidentally, if you really, really must focus on your weaknesses, then I say be vigilant about the ways in which you talk about it and in which you think about it. I like to think about the areas that we want to improve as opportunities for growth and to apply a growth mindset to the process, the belief that we can always be getting better so we don't get stuck in focusing on the weakness for its own sake, because what we focus on amplifies. And because language matters. And I have a little bit more to add on that in a bit, but for now, what exactly is a superpower? As I've said before, strengths-based living includes gifts and skills. But for me, there is a subtle distinction in terminology. And if you've been a listener for a while, you already know that I define a superpower, and I say this almost every week to my guests, as that special strength or that special quality or ability that has been with you your entire life, that shows up and has shown up regardless of your stage or your age, regardless of the work you've been doing at the time, and that is so natural to you and so normal and so intuitive that it is almost like the air you breathe or the water you swim in, and that it's so effortless to you that you might not even consider it to be especially important or precious because it's so much like second nature to you that you assume everyone else has it too. So it's the kind of thing that probably feels effortless to you, but to others, it looks like you are scaling a vertical surface while somehow managing to avoid slipping. And so there's the challenge, right? If something is so much like the air you breathe, is so effortless to you, how do you identify it? How do you find it? And the answer starts with self-reflection, because self-awareness is at the heart of personal power. So here is step number 1 for identifying your superpower. Go right now, run to your office, grab some Post-it notes. If you don't have any Post-it notes, a pad of paper will do. Go grab one or another, okay? And I'm going to wait. Or just shut off the audio for now and come on back. And if you're driving, by the way, or doing something else that keeps you from writing right now, you don't have to worry. I will compile the questions I'm about to ask, and I'll put them in the show notes so you can find them at lisabl.com/68. Okay, and also here's a little pro tip. With the Post-it notes, I like to use the big window in my living room as an idea space so I can put things down there, I can move them around. You can use a wall if that's all you have. And if you have neither, even the surface of a table will work. Okay, so I'm going to assume you're back now and we're ready to go. So here we go. Here are the questions I want you to ask yourself. What comes easily to you? What is effortless? And I want you to list everything that comes to mind with no editing, no censoring, no judgment, no saying, oh, that's not really important. If you think it, put it down. Okay, and the corollary of that is what, in spite of having challenging aspects to it, in spite of being challenging in some ways, you will happily do anyway? What offers you such rich rewards that you are willing to do it in spite of the challenge, in spite of the difficulty? Put it down. What activities do you do that you find yourself losing track of time, that you suddenly realize hours have gone by and you've had your head down and you've been fully engaged? Write it down. Jot it down on a Post-it note. Stick it on the table. Stick it on the wall. Stick it on the window. What activities do you do that make you forget to eat when suddenly you realize, oh, I haven't even eaten today or in hours? What activities did you love to do as a child? You may still do them, you may not. Also, what haven't you done for years that you used to love and that you know you really miss? It's that thing that you've said, oh, I really have to get back to such and such. Put it down. What job did you always dream of doing? And what parts of your current work would you do even if you didn't get paid for it? And what work would you love to do but don't? At least not yet. What gives you joy? What brings you pleasure? Think about that. Put it down. What things do other people reflect back to you in amazement? What things do they express admiration for you about? What do they tell you impresses them about you? And what do they say they admire and even perhaps say they wish they could do too? Write all of those things down on your pad of paper or on your Post-it notes. Think about what things people ask you to help them with. What have they thanked you for? What have they said, thank you so much for your contribution to me in this way? Write it down. Where do you notice that you see things that other people don't, where they might have a blind spot and it's sort of obvious to you? What comes to mind when you think about that? And what do you feel really confident about? What do you know you are good at? What do you love about yourself? And what is really different about you? Think about those things. And if you want, you can actually rewind the audio and go back over those questions again and see if there's another layer of answers that comes to mind. Okay, now congratulations. You've just made a list of your gifts. That's the things that come naturally to you, as well as your skills. Those are the strengths that you've developed over time or through focused attention. The next step is to look over the list and search for patterns. If you've done this on Post-it notes, you can actually move the Post-it notes around and see if you can group them into categories or items that seem to share similarities. And then look at the groupings and see if you can find themes. Look for underlying values and commonalities, and look underneath the thing you've noted itself to what enables that particular power. What's underneath it? So for example, if you love making spreadsheets and that's something you're really good at, it's something you've been thanked for, something that you've lost track of time doing. And say perhaps when you were a child, you loved solving math word problems. And perhaps the people seek you out because they want to know what line of action makes most rational sense to you because they know you're really good at that. Perhaps those notes belong together. And then when you're looking at them, you might identify the ability to say, analyze data or be analytical as the central underlying superpower. Or maybe like my guest last week, Greg Schwartz, you have always had the ability to communicate in a variety of ways, that you get a thrill from the aha moment when someone finally understands something you're saying. Greg, for example, found that particular skill showing up in his dating coaching and also years before helping his sister with her math problems. As well as during presentations, he had an ability to describe things in different ways until people actually got it. So we decided to call his superpower Finding the Light Bulb Moment. In episode number 58 with speaker Crystal Langan, we noticed that her greatest gift as a speaker was being present to what is true in that moment in her body, and that her legacy from her teenage father, a skill that she shared with him, was the ability to be present with people in the moment and to really listen, and that her commitment in the world is to nurturing the presence and beauty of women through her coaching, through her closet reform, through her speaking circles. And so we called her superpower the power of presence. So now I want you to look at your Post-its, at the collection of things that you found and identified to be easy and fun, the things that you love to do, the things you're recognized for. And just look at the groupings, especially the ones that have the greatest concentration of notes. What are the themes there? Is there a way of expressing the underlying essence of each note in a way that, say, applies to all of them? A commonality, an identifying, unifying theme. In my conversations with guests, I always ask them, after defining what a superpower is to me, if something comes to mind for them. Because I really believe that it's important for the person whose superpower it is to take the first stab. But then I tell them what I see. And in many cases, I will see something slightly different or offer a refinement or a subtle way of naming it or deepening it that they might not have initially recognized. And I can tell you that many times it really lands with them. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we together explore or we grapple with the language around it. And we don't always identify the perfect phrase, but sometimes we hit on it and it lands with them. And so that's the power of reflection. And that leads us to your step number 2. If you're still not sure what your superpower is, think about what has been reflected back to you. And then even better, ask people who know you. You can do it in conversation, or you can take it on like a project. You can send an email. Ask at least 3 different types of people in your life, maybe a friend, a family member, and people you work with. You can use my definition for context, or you can just simplify it for them by asking them to reflect on what they think you are really good at. And like I say, ask a mix of people. Ask some who are close to you, some who know you well, some are colleagues, some people that you work with, their clients, their friends, and get them, or perhaps another friend or a different person, to review your notes with you, to review your Post-its with you. If you don't see themes yourself, ask someone else to talk through it with you, to look at each individual note, share what they mean to you, what they reflect, what you think about them, and then ask your friend to reflect back what themes they see. Sometimes having an external objective perspective can be really powerful. And now step number 3 that you can do alone or in collaboration is to name it. Because there is an incredible power in naming. And in the case of my guests, some of the other superpowers we've identified, they fall into categories. And a lot of times there's a great amount of overlap. Because many of my guests, not surprisingly, share my values, since I pick my guests. And some of the values and the themes that show up are things like honoring emotions and connection and authenticity and honesty. But even in cases where the themes are similar, there are almost always nuanced differences between people. So for example, in the shows that celebrate emotion, one of them, episode number 61 with the joy junkie, Amy Smith, we identified her superpower as the freedom to emote. So while it might seem obvious to call her superpower the ability to feel joy, since she's the joy junkie, the actual power behind that, in fact, is the freedom she's had for much of her life to express her feelings. She talks about how not all of her feelings were always joy, but her ability and freedom to feel the emotions and to express them has been the thing that's led her to her ability to be the joy junkie. Similarly, but also slightly different, trauma coach Julia Friedman in episode number 59, her work is also powered by a reverence for feelings. But in her case, the superpower behind her work has more to do with the courage that she's had in relationship to very deep feelings. And those are often, in her case, in her life, very deep feelings, which might be scary to other people. So we called her superpower the bravery to feel deeply. And in Dream Coach Catherine Lawson's episode number 29, she described how over and over again in her life, she's been able to convert a great amount of pain into deeper understanding. So we called her superpower turning suffering into meaning. Connection's also a theme that showed up in many episodes. Again, not surprisingly, because it is such a deep and huge value for me. But again, there were nuances in the way different guests applied connection in their work. So episode number 41 features singer-songwriter Dana LaCroix, who's my baby sister. We featured her superpower of creating connection through music because community building is so important to her, and she does it through her music. Well, in episode number 44, with guest master connector Lou Diamond, his superpower is a little bit more sort of masculine based, and we called it flexing connection muscles. Well, venture capitalist Daniel Strockman in episode number 43 uses her superpower of investing in relationship. She uses it currently as a guide for investing in young entrepreneurs as a venture capitalist, but it was also central when she was the director of the 20 Under 20 program at the Teal Fellowship. And then before that, in founding a school. So it showed up over and over again in her life. Honesty and authenticity also appear repeatedly on the Superpower You podcast. And NLP practitioner Crystalline Dillon, in episode number 43, has always had a facility with words. And that was true at every stage of her life. So it is not a huge surprise that she found NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and that she's such a powerful coach and facilitator. And so we named her episode The Power of Words. Astrologist Nata Campanelli in episode number 42. Her superpower is more on the fertile listening side of things. As an astrologer, she hears people, she reflects back, and she shares, listening for what shows up in people's charts. And so we called her superpower Listening for Truth. And then funny lady and podcaster Merle Climo of episode number 26 has a disarmingly candid presence that has shown up in everything she does. So we simply called her superpower candidness. Whereas homeschooler and 14-year-old author Sophia Fitzmedard bravely tells the truth, even with the knowledge that doing so can be costly to her. And so her superpower in episode number 9 is courageous communication. So there is power in naming. This is the point that I'm trying to get across. And so I want you to go back and look at your list, look at your Post-it notes, and see if you can name your superpower. I'm committed to identifying and naming superpowers because I believe that words have incredible power. I want to highlight the amazing Jason Silva and what he once said in his video called The World is Made of Words, which is 3 minutes and 27 seconds of brilliance about the transformative power of language, and which I will definitely link to in the show notes so you can check it out. And he said, I language, therefore I become. And so paraphrasing his brilliance as an appeal for you to name your superpower. Here's the idea that he shares in that video. Words are generative. They are like incantations, and we are made in language and by language. So choose the words you use about yourself with discernment and intention and agency, and become an author of reality. And I would add, an author of the best version of yourself possible. So yes, talk about your superpower. Share it with others. And if you feel a bit self-conscious about celebrating yourself, well, I'm going to say, you know what? Fly in the face of that, because the world needs more people who are comfortable with self-love and self-celebration. And then if you are still uncomfortable, then by all means, balance it out by helping someone else find their superpower. On a recent interview I did with Beth Whitman for the She's Bold podcast, I was asked about my own superpower, and so I realized that I haven't, or at least I don't often share my superpower. And that's because I love shining the light on others. But the truth is, it's also good for me to model self-celebration. So my superpower is connecting ideas and people. And I discovered when I looked back at the list of things I've done in the past that that superpower shows up over and over again in one form or another. From my career in film and television and my even greater love of studying acting, I've always found myself making connections between seemingly disparate things. So, for example, between acting process and life. And now, in the through lines I see between dance and teaching and parenting, I see the commonalities. My speaking skills training course, for example, is based on skills I learned as a theater student, and then I deepened as an actor. And then in the past 10 years, I've founded a number of very impactful groups and communities for people who can benefit from knowing each other and from supporting each other in specific topics of interest like attachment parenting and also independent learning, for example. And then in my social and my family life when I was a child and when I was a teenager and even now as an adult, I thrive in situations where the amazing people I know get to meet and know each other. So I'm thrilled when I realize that my friends have become friends, sometimes through me, sometimes by coincidence. And I'm always looking to set up blind dates for my single friends. I love building communities, and I believe that in so many situations, people are better together. So in almost every stage and age of my life, my natural inclination, my skill set, that which comes naturally to me as breathing air, has involved synergizing ideas or bringing together people or both at the same time. As is the case with this show, and in fact is one of the driving forces behind this show, because I want you to know the amazing people I know and to benefit and learn from their ideas. And then as I've deepened into understanding that connecting people and ideas is my superpower, I've been able to build on it and to improve upon it, to strengthen it, and to recognize it for the contribution it brings to the people I know and the ways in which it adds to the world in my own small way. So there is something like that for you too. And I implore you to find it because it's my contention that knowing what it is can change your life and can positively impact the people around you, including, maybe especially, those you love the most. And because I'm such a stand for our ability to be better together, I'm going to suggest that you explore your superpower in collaboration with others if you are even remotely inclined to do so or excited by that idea. So the next time you meet someone new, if you're on a date, you're on a job interview, or the next time you're having dinner with your kids or your best friend, ask them about their superpower and then reflect your perception about it back to them. Try out the language you think describes them at their best and ask them if it feels right. And you will know you are close when they either say something like, oh, that's no big deal. That's nothing. Or even better, if you see their eyes light up and they get that glow that people get when they feel deeply seen and recognized and acknowledged. Then when you've hit on it, when you know you've touched it, when you see it land in them, celebrate them for it. Even thank them for the difference their superpower makes in your life or in the world. Then by honoring them in that way, by empowering them, even if it might be a little bit uncomfortable or it might seem like a really small thing to do, in a way, you are further impacting the world because you're having a butterfly effect. And then once you've identified your superpower for yourself and with other people, then I invite you to keep on being curious, keep on digging. You can think of a superpower like a diamond. Keep on dusting it off, polishing it, and enhancing the sparkle so they shine even more brightly, so they show up even more fully in your world. So I'm going to leave it there for today. If you feel like you would benefit from my help, do book a coaching call at lisabl.com/coaching, or just get into the conversation with friends and loved ones. And you know what? I would love to hear what you learn and what you identify. So once you have an idea, I invite you to send me an email at hey@lisabl.com, or even better, simply open up your phone recorder and tell me your name and your business and what you think your superpower is. And I might just play it on the show so I can highlight listener superpowers and so you can have an impact on others and inspire them to find theirs. Because together we just get so much stronger. Together we rise. So as always, I thank you so much for being here today. I thank you for your attention, for your time, and I thank you for all that you are doing out there in the world. I know you're making it a better place in little and not so little ways. And until next week, I send you much love.
Thank you for listening to the Superpower You podcast. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes and get more information at lisabl.com.